Sometimes the most transformative moves in franchise history happen when an organization looks across the division at a rival's roster and realizes that the answer to their most pressing need is wearing the wrong colors, playing for the wrong team, and torturing their secondary twice a year. There's a conversation happening right now that involves the Chicago Bears' desperate need for explosive playmaking at wide receiver, that connects directly to someone who's been absolutely destroying our defense for years, and that would require the kind of bold divisional maneuvering that separates championship-caliber front offices from those content with mediocrity. Welcome to Bears News Fan Report, your home where you'll get the latest updated news and exclusive insider analysis on our beloved Chicago Bears, where we break down not just what's happening, but what should happen to get this franchise back to championship contention. Today, I need to walk you through a scenario that might seem controversial at first, but makes perfect strategic sense when you dig into the details. Something that involves adding a game-changing weapon to Caleb Williams' arsenal. Something that would send shockwaves through the entire NFC North. Stay with me because this analysis is about to get extremely interesting and could completely reshape how you think about building this Bears offense. Let me start by establishing the uncomfortable reality of where the Chicago Bears currently stand at the wide receiver position, because acknowledging our weaknesses is the first step toward addressing them effectively. We've invested resources in the position, we've tried developing young players, we've brought in veterans on prove-it deals, and yet we still lack that elite outside receiver who can consistently win one-on-one matchups, stretch the field vertically, and create explosive plays that change the complexion of games. DJ Moore is a very good player who works primarily underneath and in the intermediate range, but he's not a true field stretcher who makes defenses respect the deep ball. Our other receivers are solid complementary pieces, but nobody watching Bears football objectively can claim we have the kind of receiving weapons that elite offenses possess. This isn't just my opinion or pessimistic analysis. This is supported by objective data from the 2025 season. Our offense ranks near the bottom of the league in explosive pass plays of over 20 yards. We struggle to create separation downfield against tight man coverage, and Caleb Williams frequently has to hold the ball too long because receivers aren't getting open quickly enough against quality defensive backs. That's not entirely on the receivers. Offensive line play and scheme matter enormously, but the talent gap at the position is undeniable when you compare our receiving corps to teams like the Lions, Eagles, or Cowboys, who have multiple legitimate weapons that defenses must account for on every single snap. The frustrating part for Bears fans is that we've seen what having an elite vertical threat can do for a young quarterback's development. We've watched Justin Fields struggle for years without proper weapons. We've seen how the lack of explosive playmaking capability limited what we could do offensively, and now we're in danger of repeating the same mistakes with Caleb Williams if we don't aggressively address the receiver position. Williams has elite arm talent. He can make every throw required in the modern NFL, but he needs receivers who can separate and create opportunities for him to showcase that arm talent. Without that, we're wasting the most important years of his rookie contract when we should be surrounding him with weapons and building toward playoff contention. Now here's where this discussion takes an interesting turn, and here's where I need you to really focus on what I'm about to explain. When evaluating potential receiver additions, there are essentially three pathways available. You can draft a receiver high and hope he develops quickly, which is always a gamble given how inconsistent receiver evaluation is, even in the first round. You can pursue free agents who command massive contracts on the open market, which strains your salary cap and often results in overpaying for production. Or you can identify players currently under contract elsewhere who might become available through trades, players whose current teams might be motivated to move them for various reasons. That third option is where the most interesting opportunities often emerge, and it's where championship front offices separate themselves from mediocre ones. You need to identify players who aren't being fully utilized in their current systems, who might have contractual situations that make them trade candidates, or who play for organizations facing difficult roster decisions. And when I started analyzing the wide receiver landscape across the NFL, looking for players who fit those criteria, looking specifically for someone who could provide the explosive vertical element our offense desperately needs, one name kept appearing that would be controversial but strategically brilliant. Before I reveal that name, let me paint you the picture of what the ideal receiver addition would look like for the Chicago Bears. We need someone with legitimate deep speed who forces defenses to respect vertical routes and prevents them from loading the box against our run game. We need a player who's proven he can win contested catches downfield when we need explosive plays in crucial moments. We need someone who's still relatively young and fits our championship timeline with Caleb Williams. We need a receiver who has experience in the NFC North and understands the physicality required to succeed in this division. And ideally, we need someone whose current team might be facing difficult decisions that could make them available. There's exactly one player who checks every single one of those boxes, a receiver who's been absolutely torching NFL defenses, including ours for the past several seasons, someone whose combination of size and speed creates matchup nightmares that defenses simply cannot solve with single coverage. This player averaged over 60 yards per game this season, has scored 5 touchdowns despite not being the primary focal point of his offense, and possesses the kind of explosive playmaking ability that completely changes how defenses have to approach game planning. When this receiver is on the field, safeties have to respect the deep ball, which opens up everything underneath for other receivers and creates running lanes for the ground game. The player I'm talking about is Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers, and before you dismiss this as impossible or crazy, hear me out on why this makes more strategic sense than you might initially think. Watson has posted 28 catches for 481 yards and 5 touchdowns through the first part of the 2025 season, averaging an elite 17.2 yards per reception that demonstrates his big play capability. He's been targeted 43 times, which actually suggests he's not being utilized as heavily as his talent deserves in Green Bay's crowded receiver room. That's significant, because it indicates Watson might not be viewed as an untouchable piece of the Packers' long-term plans. Now, let's talk about why Green Bay might be willing to move Watson despite his obvious talent. The Packers have significant depth at the receiver position, with multiple young players competing for targets, which creates a situation where Watson might be viewed as a luxury they can afford to trade if the return is significant enough. Green Bay also faces some difficult contract decisions coming up with other key players, and moving Watson could provide cap relief and draft capital to address other needs. This isn't about the Packers thinking Watson isn't good. It's about roster construction and the reality that sometimes talented players become available because teams have difficult choices to make. From the Bears' perspective, acquiring Watson would be a franchise-altering move that addresses our most glaring need while sending a message that we're serious about winning now with Caleb Williams. Imagine Watson running vertical routes that force safeties to play deeper, creating massive windows for DJ Moore to work underneath, opening up play-action opportunities for our tight ends and running backs. That's not incremental improvement, that's offensive transformation that elevates everyone around him. And the fact that Watson knows the NFC North intimately, that he's already proven he can perform at a high level in cold weather and hostile environments, eliminates any concerns about adaptation period or scheme fit. The specific matchup data is particularly compelling when evaluating Watson's potential impact on our offense. In Week 14 this season, Watson absolutely destroyed the Bears' defense with 4 catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. That wasn't an anomaly. That's what Watson does when he gets opportunities against defenses that don't have answers for his combination of size at 6'4" and speed that allows him to run past defensive backs vertically. Now imagine instead of watching him torch us twice a year, we're the ones benefiting from those explosive plays. That's the kind of thinking that championship organizations embrace, recognizing talent regardless of where it currently resides and being aggressive about acquiring it. Let me address the obvious question that every Bears fan is thinking right now. Would the Packers really trade a talented receiver to their biggest division rival? History suggests divisional trades are rare, but not impossible when the value proposition makes sense for both sides. The Packers would likely demand significant compensation, probably a second-round pick, plus additional considerations. But that's a price I'd pay without hesitation for a proven explosive receiver in his prime who fills our most pressing need. We can draft defensive players or offensive linemen with those picks, but finding a receiver with Watson's combination of size, speed, and proven production is extraordinarily difficult even at the top of the draft. The timing of this potential move is also strategically significant. Watson is dealing with a chest injury designation that's kept him on the questionable list, which might actually work in our favor during negotiations by slightly depressing his trade value. I'm not suggesting we exploit an injury situation unethically, but the reality of NFL roster construction is that teams sometimes become more willing to move players when there are health questions that create uncertainty. If Watson is fully healthy, he's probably untouchable. If there are legitimate concerns about durability or availability, that creates a window for aggressive teams to acquire talent at reasonable prices. The financial aspects of this deal are also more manageable than you might expect. Watson is still on his rookie contract, which means he's incredibly cost-effective compared to what elite receivers command on the open market. Acquiring him wouldn't require us to commit massive long-term salary cap resources, giving us flexibility to address other positions in free agency while still adding elite talent at receiver. And when his contract expires, we'd have the opportunity to extend him at that point if the fit works as well as I expect. Or we could have gotten several years of prime production without breaking the bank. Beyond just the on-field impact, acquiring Christian Watson from the Green Bay Packers would send an unmistakable psychological message to the entire NFC North about what kind of organization the Chicago Bears are becoming. It would demonstrate that we're not content with slow, patient rebuilding, that we're willing to be aggressive and creative in pursuit of championship-caliber talent, and that we view Caleb Williams' development as urgent enough to warrant bold moves. But championship organizations don't let geographical rivalry prevent them from acquiring difference-making talent when it becomes available. I'm genuinely excited about what Watson could bring to this offense, and I believe Ryan Poles should be exploring every possible avenue to make this happen. If you want the fastest breaking Bears news and the most comprehensive strategic analysis, you need to subscribe to Bears News Fan Report right now. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and share this video with other Bears fans who need to understand what moves could transform this franchise. This is your home for everything Chicago Bears, and I want you part of this community. Bear down!